Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. Recently we looked at why the Bad Batch seemed extremely incompetent against the latest series of enemies they have been fighting, specifically the Zygerian slavers and the security droids on Corellia. We looked at several different factors and why we're seeing such a decline in the fighting abilities of Clone Force 99. They went from ripping through an entire company of droids to getting flanked and captured by a bunch of cat people who don't even fire off a blaster round. It's downright embarrassing. Now, some people wanted me to reassess my views on the Bad Batch's performance after one of the latest episodes where they meet up against a bunch of clones led by their former sniper Crosshair. And my assessment is, of course, Clone Force 99 should be able to evade a bunch of clones. They've been living and fighting alongside regs their entire lives. There's also my suggestion that maybe the inhibitor chips being activated made Clone Force 99 less efficient after Order 66 was triggered. Clone Force 99 might not be under full control of those inhibitor chips in their heads, but maybe it was creating some kind of effect that made it harder for them to think and fight. Of course, now these inhibitor chips are removed. Another theory was that Crosshair, their Overwatch, was the key to the unit's success, which I guess is a possibility if you look at all the tactics that involve Crosshair before he joins the Empire. But then that led me to an even crazier theory. What if the Clones and Separatist droids were only good at fighting each other and designed specifically to fight against each other? What if both armies were actually terrible in most combat situations and would be destroyed by most other military forces? This would actually explain a lot of the weird things we see happening on the screen. I mean, think about it. The entire Clone Wars was an orchestrated conflict between Darth Sidious and Darth Tyrannus, who were best friends, master and apprentice. It was the Sith who created tension and conflict in the Outer Rim. It was the Sith who passed the legislation to deregulate the Outer Rim. The Sith are the ones who encouraged the Trade Federation to blockade Naboo. It was the Sith who created Darth Tyrannus and his extremely successful populist campaign against the core planets and the Republic. It was the Sith who convinced the larger Outer Rim corporations to supply Darth Tyrannus with a massive droid army. I mean, Chancellor Palpatine and Count Dooku controlled exactly 100% of the war effort, and they were 20 steps ahead of everyone, including the Jedi. So is it all that far-fetched to believe that the soldiers in the war they were fighting was also completely nonsensical as well? Is it possible that every major theater of the war, every planet that the Republic took over, was also planned? I mean, was it really a coincidence that trouble spots like Ryloth and Mandalore had massive clone forces stationed on there after Order 66, which led to a brutal and extremely successful swift takeover when the Empire rose?
What about the droid attack on the Wookiees?
If you guys have read the Clone Commando series, you'll probably begin to realize that nothing flies over the heads of the Clone Commandos and the Mandalorian mercenaries who trained them. They basically saw through all of this nonsense. Very early on, the Clone Commandos, who had access to troop numbers across the galaxy, realized that the Separatist Alliance had their own clone army completely outnumbered. Even though the clones won the day at Geonosis, they had deployed the Republic's entire army, and they had suffered heavy casualties. Millions of Separatist droids managed to escape this battle, and some estimates say that at the time, the Separatists outnumbered the Republic 25-1, especially if you take into account all of the freighters around Geonosis that were full of battle droids. The Separatists would continue to have this crazy advantage over the Republic, and it really confused all of the Clone Commandos. They wondered why Count Dooku didn't just destroy the Republic and take over. He definitely had the troop numbers and ships to do so. I mean, the Republic didn't even have a capital ship at this point. They didn't have the Venator-class Star Destroyer, so there's really no way of stopping the Separatist horde. It makes sense that Palpatine would make the Separatist droids and clone troopers less competent. It would make the war much easier to control. On top of that, do you really think Palpatine trusted Dooku enough to give him so much power and control? Dooku was the public face of the Confederacy of Independent Systems. He was doing lecture circuits and worship by an Outer Rim population that was usually neglected by important politicians or organizations like the Jedi. Count Dooku had the true support and backing of the Outer Rim. Why would Palpatine trust Count Dooku with so much power and a much larger army and navy than even what the Republic had? Well, you could say that Palpatine needed a large, credible threat against the Republic so that he could seize power and create his own army. But I also believe that Palpatine gave Dooku a completely incompetent army so that if his apprentice tries to rebel or take over, as the Sith oftentimes do, Palpatine can still defeat him without much issue. I mean, take a look at these battles here where the clones and droids just seem to run at each other without taking any cover. It happens all the time during the entire war with almost every unit. I used to think it was just the Jedi commanders being idiots and forcing their clones to do something that was extremely dangerous. But maybe the clones were also poorly trained. I mean, they were trained a lot, but not necessarily in basic infantry tactics and movements that would be effective against non-droid or non-clone units. It's almost as if the clones and droids were both programmed specifically to fight each other in a very balanced but inefficient way. I mean, droids can be programmed to take cover. They don't really need to stand up in battle formation to get destroyed. But that's maybe what Palpatine wanted the world to see. Large, high amount of casualties, but at the same time, these casualties are mainly made from manufactured units, whether it's clones or droids. Very few citizen soldiers actually fought in the Clone Wars outside of planetary defense forces. And so this is actually a great way to ramp up the danger and threat of the war without actually losing political support because you're getting so many people killed. Now, if we take a closer look at Clone Force 99, they definitely are very good at taking out droids. It's almost as if they're playing a game when they're fighting against them. There's no sense of threat or danger whatsoever. This kind of further reinforces the idea that this whole entire war is just a show made by Palpatine McScrotumface. What else can explain these massive military parade-style formations like the ones we see during the Battle of Malastare? What explains these clones who surprised Grievous on New Tapu? There's no sense of self-preservation in their movement. There's no cover. But I guess at least it looks cool. And so the holocams will continue picking up footage of the terrifying droids goose-stepping their way towards the core. And the Republic citizens watching the holonet will continue to support Palpatine's goals of creating a massive military-industrial complex centered around a bunch of clones who don't have any family, who don't have any voting rights, and are basically slaves that have to fight for the Republic. So there you have it, guys. That is my theory about what the true purpose of the clones and the separatists are. This also might be why Emperor Palpatine retires the clone army because, you know, I hate to say it, they could be useless. And I know a lot of you guys love clone troopers, and I love the clones as well. I have a very big soft spot for them because the amount of hardship they can take without even complaining is very admirable. But at the same time, yeah, maybe this is all just designed this way. And so all their sacrifices are completely meaningless. That'd be kind of sad. Anyway, guys, let me know in the comment section below what you think about my theory. Also, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. And as usual, thanks for joining us today. If you're watching this, you are Generation Tech.